Ragsmed. Today we are going to study a topic known as gangrene. So, what is gangrene? It is necrosis plus putrefaction, that is decomposition. So, it is necrosis of tissue associated with superadded putrefaction. So, gangrene takes place after necrosis. So, can you tell me what is necrosis? In the last lecture, we have already studied about the 5 types of necrosis. So, necrosis is simply a type of cell death involving clusters of cells. So, basically, when there is cell death, two things happens. First, the area undergoes necrosis, that is dead tissue. Second thing is that part, the necrosed part, immediately starts decomposition, and decomposition of necrosed tissue is known as putrefaction. So in a human body, if any type of necrosis takes place in any organ, then that tissue will attract bacteria, and that bacteria will cause decomposition or putrefaction of that dead cells. So this is all about gangrene definition. Now let's see the types of gangrene. So basically there are two types of gangrene, that is dry and wet, and a variant of wet gangrene is known as gas gangrene. So there are altogether 3 types of gangrene. So in dry gangrene there is no or few bacterial superinfection. So due to less bacterial infection, the tissue appears dry, whereas in wet gangrene there is abundant bacteria presence. So bacterial superinfection has occurred and tissue looks wet and liquefactive. The main difference between dry and wet gangrene is that in dry gangrene there is coagulative necrosis, but in wet gangrene there is liquefactive necrosis. In all types of gangrene, necrosis undergoes liquefaction by the action of putrefaction or putrefactive bacteria. Now let's see dry gangrene. So it generally begins in the distal part of the limb, that is toes and feet, and due to ischemia, that is blockage of artery or obstruction in the artery, there is less blood and it results to coagulative necrosis. And dry gangrene spreads slowly upwards until where the blood supply is adequate to keep the tissue viable. That is, a dry gangrene spreads slowly in comparison to wet gangrene, which spreads very fast. And another feature of dry gangrene is line of demarcation or separation. A line of separation is formed at this point between gangrenous part and the viable part. That is, we can easily differentiate the viable part, that is living part, and gangrenous part in dry gangrene. Another major feature of dry gangrene is that it is a type of coagulative necrosis. The extent of vascular occlusion, that is obstruction, is frequently global in the lower limbs, which impedes or prevents the migration of leukocytes into the area of coagulative necrosis. It is called gangrenous necrosis because the dead tissue is not digested and removed but remains mummified. Grossly, if we see a dry gangrene, then the affected part looks dry, shrunken and dark black, resembling the foot of a mummy. It is black due to liberation of hemoglobin from hemolyzed red blood cells, which is acted upon by hydrogen disulfide, that is H2S, produced by bacteria, resulting in formation of black iron sulfide. And major feature is that line of separation is easily visible. So here we can see the figure of dry gangrene. So the artery of this area has been obstructed, due to which there is little or no supply of blood, causing coagulative necrosis of this area. And due to necrosis there is superimposition of few or no bacteria, causing or looking the tissue as dry, shrunken and dark black, resembling the foot of a mummy. And second thing we can see is that a clear line of demarcation is seen. That is, this is the viable part, that is living part, and this is the necrosed part. So this was all about dry gangrene. Now let's come to wet gangrene. So when overlying skin of dry gangrenous tissue is devitalized, bacterial infection is superimposed. That is, abundant bacteria is present in wet gangrene and the coagulative necrosis modified by liquefactive necrosis. Wet gangrene generally occurs in naturally moist tissue and organs such as bowel, lung, mouth, cervix and vulva, and it develops due to blockage of both venous as well as arterial blood flow. In the dry gangrene there was the arterial obstruction, whereas in wet gangrene there is both arterial as well as venous obstruction. And wet gangrene spreads more rapidly as compared to dry gangrene, which spreads slowly. And here in wet gangrene there is no clear-cut line of demarcation is seen. So the classic example of wet gangrene is gangrene of the bowel, commonly due to strangulated hernia. So another important thing in wet gangrene is of diabetic foot, which is due to high glucose content favors growth of bacteria. So in case of diabetic patient, doctors generally recommend them not to walk in barefoot, because if they encountered any injury in the foot, then as we know, in diabetes there is hyperglycemia, that is, there is more glucose present, due to which bacteria easily attract in the site of cellinjury, causing liquefaction of that foot, resulting in wet gangrene. So grossly, the wet gangrene looks like soft, swollen, putrid, rotten and dark. Here we can see the figure of wet gangrene of small bowel, and the affected part looks soft, swollen and dark, and the line of demarcation between gangrenous segment and viable ball is not clear cut. That is, we cannot see a clear line of separation between the affected and the living part of that particular tissue. So here are few points that we have to remember. In dry gangrene, it is the variant of coagulative necrosis, whereas in wet gangrene, the liquefactive necrosis is superimposed on coagulative necrosis. Now let's see the difference between dry and wet gangrene. So the dry gangrene commonly occurs in the limbs, whereas wet gangrene occurs in moist tissues, that is bowel, lungs, cervix, vulva, etc. And in dry gangrene, there is generally arterial obstruction, that is arterial occlusion, whereas in wet gangrene there is blockage of both venous as well as arterial obstruction. On macroscopy view, the dry gangrene appears as dry, shrunken and black, whereas in wet gangrene, the affected part looks moist, soft, swollen, rotten and dark. The fourth point and the major point is that putrefaction is limited in dry gangrene due to very little blood supply, whereas in wet gangrene, putrefaction is marked due to stuffing of organ with blood. And the line of demarcation is present at the junction between healthy and gangrenous part in dry gangrene, whereas no clear and cut line of demarcation is seen in wet gangrene. And the bacteria is few or no bacteria is present in dry gangrene. so it fails to survive in dry gangrene. Whereas in wet gangrene, bacteria are abundant, that is, numerous bacteria are present in wet gangrene. And the prognosis of dry gangrene generally better due to little septicemia, whereas in wet gangrene the prognosis is generally poor due to profound toxemia. So this was all about the difference between dry and wet gangrene. Now let's see a variant of wet gangrene, that is gas gangrene. So it is a special form of wet gangrene caused by gas forming bacteria known as Clostridia, and it is a gram positive anaerobic bacteria. It enters through open contaminated wounds or a complication of operation on colon which normally contains Clostridia. So grossly, if we see the gas gangrene, it appears as swollen, edematous, painful and crepitant. So what is crepitant? It means bubbles containing air cavities. Due to accumulation of gas bubbles of carbon dioxide with the tissue formed by fermentation of sugars by the bacterial toxins. So let's see figure of gas gangrene. So in this figure you can see the condition of gas gangrene. So imagine this is a person who has encountered road accident and he fell on the road containing soil, so he got injured on thigh, and in the soil there was spores of Clostridia, due to which the wound get contaminated with the soil, so the spores of Clostridia entered in the necrotic tissue. So you can see this area is necrosed and Clostridia has entered in the necrotic tissue and grows there, forming the gas in the tissue. So here you can see these are the gas bubbles formed by gas bacteria, gas forming bacteria, that is Clostridia. So you can see the gas bubbles here. This is known as gas gangrene. So in order to stop the growth of the bacteria, the foot has to be cut from here, because as we know the wet gangrene grows rapidly and the gas gangrene is a variant of wet gangrene, so it grows more rapidly. So this is all about gas gangrene. So here is one question for you guys. Whenever you see this video, you can comment down your answer in the comment section and I will definitely reply the answer of this question. So let's see the question. Diabetic foot is associated with following type of gangrene. Option A, dry gangrene. B, wet gangrene. C, gas gangrene. D, foreigner gangrene. So drop down your answer in the comment section and I will definitely reply the answer. So this is all about the today's topic, that is gangrene. If you guys have any doubt or questions, then please let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe with more friends. Thank you.